What's going on, everybody? It's Lucky Finn Gaming here, and welcome back to Ark Survival Evolved, where today we're going to be taking a look at 6 animals that are more fantasy than fact. So without further ado, let's get into this. Starting off at number 5, obviously it's the Gigantapithicus. I put this one at the number 5 slot, even though it is quite possibly the most fantasy-based animal on this list. I put it at number 5 because we've talked about this one twice over now. This makes it the third time in a row that I've talked about this animal, so I'm trying to get this one out of the way really fast. Really, this thing's basically a Bigfoot. It takes almost purely out of the myth of the Bigfoot, and just kind of slaps Gigantapithicus on the name. So, yeah, definitely number 5, the Gigantapithicus. Let's move on to the next, because we've already talked about this one a lot. Alright, guys, and before we get into the number 4 slot, you'll find out the creature here is a little interesting. The reason I want to preface this, though, is to say this is the only animal that I'm going to try and do this to. And it's because most of its fantasy element is actually based off of its size. Going forward past this animal, I'm going to really try and stay away from size, because almost every animal in Ark is significantly larger than its real-life counterpart. So going past this animal, which is, of course, the Giga, I'm going to try and avoid size. However, definitely the Giga does belong on this list. This thing is just so unbelievably huge. I don't think, you get to play in this game a little bit, and people kind of forget to see just how large this animal is. I mean, just look at this thing right now. Okay, let me actually get on the ground real quick and get next to its foot. This thing is way larger than any animal that has ever existed. I don't know its exact dimensions. It's kind of hard to pinpoint exact dimensions, but I think this thing would be literally as big, or possibly bigger, than a blue whale, the largest animal that we know existed or actually currently exists in the world. Basically, I don't think this thing could even have existed. It definitely probably couldn't feed itself at this size. It would have to hunt almost exclusively Brontos on the island here, or the Ragnarok, or wherever it was. It would have to basically exclusively hunt Brontos. On the island, you saw that this thing actually hung out in the ice area. On one hand, even though it's a reptile, I think that may have been possibly accurate, because it would be so big that moving its body would have caused it to overheat. So it almost would have had to have lived in an icy area in order to just prevent itself from overheating and dying. So yeah, definitely this thing definitely carries far more fantasy about it than its real-life counterpart. Its real-life counterpart was actually smaller than a T-Rex. And as y'all know, this thing just dwarfs a Tyrannosaurus in this game. So definitely number 4, the Giganotosaurus. Alright, guys, and coming in at the number 3 slot is the Tapejara, which is its correct pronunciation, Tapejara, not Tapejara, as I've heard some people call it. The Tapejara, again, I'm trying to avoid size. However, I have to address this thing's size. As you can see here, this thing is big enough to hold not 1, but 3 passengers on it. Not even close to its real-life counterpart. The real-life counterpart would actually have been about the size of Ark's Dimorphodon. A very tiny little guy. But that's not all I want to talk about today. One of the things about the Tapejara is you see this big old sail here. This would have been useful for fishing, but mostly gliding. So this thing actually wouldn't even be probably flapping its wings the way you see it here. It probably would have been far more of a glider than we see it here, and it definitely would not be able to do this. This is a large part of the fantasy element here. It definitely would not have been able to be this agile in the air. Almost nothing in real life could probably be this agile short of a hummingbird. And, of course, it definitely wouldn't do it at this size. And not without moving its wings so much faster. And definitely not with 3 people on it. And then it also has this ability here, if I can make it work. Hold on, I gotta find a good rock wall to climb onto. Nope. Or maybe I can do it right here. Okay, yeah. I'm going to go to orbit camera, and as you can see, it is able to hold on to this rock face right here. Again, a thing that I don't think it probably would have been able to do, because this animal was a fishing animal. It would have spent most of its time on the seas, catching small fish out of the ocean. It would have like dove into the ocean kind of, and that big sail would have kind of helped it maintain air current, so that way it could have just kind of dove in real quick, caught some shallow fish on the surface, and gotten out. This thing holds almost none of those characteristics. About the only thing that it keeps true to is the look. The overall look is probably fairly similar to what you might actually get in real life, or which it may have looked like in real life. But outside of that, really nothing else for the Tapejara. So Tapejara definitely far more fantasy than reality. Alright guys, and then at the number 2 slot we have the Arthroplura. The Arthroplura, real briefly, again, want to discuss its size. I guess I should have preferenced this. Almost all the animals on this list, one of the reasons I included them is because of how much larger they are on the game than they would have been in real life. Like, take for example the T-Rex, though smaller in real life, wasn't like so drastically smaller that it's not even close, unlike the Giga or the Tappy. And the same with this one here. This one is so much larger than it would have been in real life. If we go to third person, you can see just how small my character is in comparison here. In real life, this thing would have been probably between 4 to maybe 6 feet. That's upper estimates for this guy. This thing is probably about, if it were to stretch out, I would say this thing's at least 20 to 25 feet, so much, much larger. But of course, as always, as I said, past the Giga, there are other reasons. One of the other things about this guy is, though depicted as a kind of scavenging carnivore on the game, it was almost purely a herbivore. At least that's what we believe right now, is that this thing would have been a herbivore almost exclusively. Only ever getting into fights with other Arthropluras, possibly over territory or food sources, but it definitely would have not enjoyed fights, unlike the aggressive nature that we see in game. Another thing is it definitely would not have had an acid bite, or this projectile spit that we see here. Definitely didn't have that. Things like projectile spit wouldn't evolve for a very long time. I guess one I could have added would be the Dilo, but Ark really didn't create the myth of the Dilo spitting. That was just that myth belongs to Jurassic Park, but Dilos didn't spit either. Very few animals in reality use spit as a offensive or defensive tactic, and the Arthroplura would definitely be included on that. So number 2, the Arthroplura holds far more fantasy value than it does reality value. Alright guys, and for the honorable mention real quick, somebody on the Discord asked me about the Titanosaur and about its reality, so I decided to go ahead and include it on the video. Really, the Titanosaur is obviously, as you can all imagine, extremely fantasy, with these rock plates on its back. No creature that we know of would have carried such things. Again, of course, its size is just monstrous. This thing dwarfs the Giga, which, as we talked about, is possibly about the size of a blue whale. Just absolutely impossible size here. I mean, I could barely be as big as this thing's eye right now. So the Titanosaur definitely holds a place on this list, but again, the reason that I just put it in the honorable mentions is because mostly what makes it stands out is its size, above anything else. It, again, like the Giga, it probably wouldn't be able to feed itself. It would be way too large, and again, it would probably need to spend a lot of its time in an icy area, or at least someplace that's nice and cool, to avoid overheating. So the Titanosaur on the list. Again, one of the reasons I decided to add it, though, because it does actually have a real life counterpart that is also the Titanosaurus. It's nothing like this. So, anyway, on to the number 1 slot. Alright guys, in number 5 we have none other than the Thylacoleo. This one is actually surprising at least a couple of people that I know who thought this thing was fairly scientifically accurate. This thing is really not even close. It started off again with its size. In reality, the thing probably would not have been much larger than a lynx or bobcat, as some of you may know them as. While this thing is probably about the size of a black rhino in IRL. This thing is just absolutely massive, monstrous size. But a couple of other things that make this thing really not even close, far more fantasy than anything else. Its home in game is definitely off. It lives in the redwoods in the game, when in reality it would have lived in a desert area. Now, putting them on scorched earth was actually a pretty good call, but everywhere else they're in redwoods, like Ragnarok and other maps, you find them in the redwoods. This is not accurate. Another thing is that they're tree climbing predators. Again, probably inaccurate. Another interesting thing that a lot of people didn't know about the Thylacoleo is if you look in there at its teeth, as you can see, those back molars there are not carnivore molars. I found it interesting that they went ahead and added that, despite the fact this thing was actually probably not even a carnivore. It was, it's believed right now that it may have been a omnivore, but far more leaning towards the size of herbivore. Those back molars and those even those front fangs would have been far more useful for grabbing fruit from trees and other things that it would have used, or that it would have lived in. So it was far more of a herbivore. It's believed that they, at the very least, they started off as a herbivore and then maybe evolved into an omnivore, but it's believed right now that they were never a pure carnivore as the game depicts them. So very interesting there. They also definitely were probably not tree hunters. They're depicted almost similar to leopards in that case, but they would not have been like that at all, and probably would not have the insane climbing ability that we see them have. These front toes here definitely would have helped with tree climbing, so they definitely were tree climbers, but not ambush predators like they are depicted in game. Alright guys, and that's all I have, the 5 animals that are more fantasy than factual. I hope you enjoyed. Like I said, I was looking to get into some more zoology and biology styled videos for Ark. So definitely happy to have yet another one out here. This one was actually chosen by the Bloodsport Discord. So yeah, really happy to make this video. But that's all I have. If you're interested in seeing more fact-based Ark stuff, or even Ark tips, which I will hopefully be adding in here soon, or Ark bases, which I have a lot that I've been meaning to show you guys, or other future Let's Play content that I'm also hoping to get out, please consider liking and subscribing. And but as for now, that's all I really have for you. So I will see you all in another time and dimension, whenever or wherever that may be. Till then, peace out.